Hi everyone, welcome back to my Instagram front-end UI part 4 tutorial. Today we will cover an exciting screen, which is the Instagram search UI. After learning how to navigate between screens in the previous video, we will learn more about text fields, grid layout, and how to make your grid items adaptive. So first, let's take a look at the search structure. The search screen consists of a search input, and we will be using the text fields view, which is a built-in input in SwiftUI. Then we have a scrollable labels, and we will end with the grid with images. So let's get started. First, make sure that the selected device is the iPhone 11 Pro, and you can change it by clicking on it and selecting the desired device. Then you can see that if you play the preview, the search screen is just our icon over here. So let's create a new view. For the search view. And to make sure that this is the correct view, we're going to change the text to search. And in your content view, remove the image search and replace it by our search view. Let's resume. And let's see if it works. So now if you click on the search icon, you see that we are selecting the search view. The first element on the search view is the input. So in component, let's create a new file and name it search input. In SwiftUI, it is necessary to use the text field, which is a built-in input view. So let's replace the text by a text field. And the text field takes two arguments. The first one is a placeholder, which is the default text when no typing has been done. Here, I will type search. And the second one is the state of your text. Well, essentially what you type. So the text, I will put it to text. And basically we need to declare this variable, which is a state of type string. And let's resume. When that happens, you see that we have an error, and this is because on the preview, we need to declare this missing argument. So if you click on fix, you can see that now we have a string for the preview. So if you put the string empty and resume it, you will see that our input is using the placeholder, which is search. And if you type something, so let's say I want to search for dog and replay the preview, you see that this is what your input will look like if someone type dog. So let's remove that and go to your search view. In here, we're going to replace the text search by the input. And here we need to, of course, put our argument, which is the text. So at the top, don't forget to declare your state for the text and in the preview as well. And because the search view is used in your content view, here for your search view, this one will be empty as well. So to make sure that everything works, let's resume and play. So far, so good. Next, let's design the search input. The layout consists of an icon at the left side and the input at the right side. So first, let's command click on the text field and embed it in an H stack. And then, right before the text field, let's add an image. And we're going to use the system name, which is the icons from SF Symbols. And this one will be the magnifying glass, like so. And here on the image, we're going to add the foreground color modifier to dot secondary to have the gray to match the placeholder. Then on the H stack, let's add a frame. So first I will remove the alignment and the height. So the width will be dot infinity. So the input will always take the full width of the container. Then let's add a padding of 10. And what I like to do is also to use the inspector panel. So here, if you select the H stack, we can add the modifier this way as well. So I will add a background. And here I will select the custom. And then at the bottom, I will select the hex value. So here it's going to be E5, E5, E5. Enter. And then the next thing to do is to add the corner radius. And I will set it to 10. And there you go. We have our search input. Go back to the search view. And in here, we're going to embed the search input inside a VStack. Make sure that the VStack has a spacing of 0. And then to push this view at the top, we're going to add a spacer. Then let's add a padding modifier on the horizontal axis of 16 pixels. So now that we have the input, let's work on the label. In component, let's create a new file and name it label. The label component is just a text with an outline. So we will keep the text, change the content to, let's say, design. Let's resume the preview. And let's add a few modifiers. So the first one is the font. Set the font to dot caption, the font weight to dot bold. Then I will add a padding on the horizontal axis of 24 and another one on the vertical axis 10. Then to make the outline, it's fairly simple. We will be using the overlay. Inside the overlay, we will add a rounded rectangle view. And this view takes only one argument, which is the corner radius of the rectangle, which is 10. And now you see that our rectangle is over the text. So to only have the outline and not the fill, we can add a modifier for the stroke, which the first one is a color dot secondary, and then we can set the line width to 1. And now let's make the text dynamic. So at the top, let's declare a new variable for the text, which is a string, and the default value will be design. So here, let's remove this static text and use our variable instead. And just like that, our component is done. Let's work on the horizontal layout. In your components folder, let's create a new file, name it labels, and in here, we're going to start with a scroll view. So let's remove our text. The first argument is the direction of your scroll. So for us, it's going to be horizontal, and then the show indicators to false. Then we need an H tag. And inside your H tag, we're going to copy paste the label multiple times. First, the text will be design, and then you can just copy paste. Then we can change the text. So code, UI, dog, travel, and food. Let's resume to see the result. All right, so on the H tag, we can add a spacing of 8. And then we can add some paddings. So here on the horizontal axis, let's set a padding of 16 points. Then to fix the issue here, because the top and the bottom of our label is cut. So to fix that, we can add a frame. Let's remove the alignment. So for the width, I will use the dot infinity and the height 38 pixels. Let's go back to the search view. And right after the search input, let's add the labels. And then we can set the spacing to 10. So let's play the preview to see if everything works. The last part of the video is focus on the grid. First, we need a list of images. Then we're going to display them inside a grid. And finally, we will work with the aspect ratio. So back in the code, we're going to create a new file for the grid. We need a list of images. And in the current project, we only have the profiles 1 to 8. So at the top over here, I'm going to declare a new variable for images, which is of type array string, which means that we have a list of multiple strings. So the first one is profile, and then I'm going to copy paste this by adding it to until we have 8 images. So now we can work on the grid. So first, let's remove the text. And the syntax of a grid is as follows. First is a lazy V grid. Then between parentheses, we have the columns and the content. So for the columns, we will leave a empty array, just like that. So essentially, it is a container view that arranges its child views into a grid layout. The lazy over here just means that the grid only renders items when they're needed. So let's say your grid has 100 items. Well, it will only render the ones in view, and the rest will be rendered as you scroll. So here for the columns, it just means that how many columns you want. Similar to CSS and HTML, it is basically your grid template column. So for now, I will just add a single column, and to do that, just do grid item. So inside of your lazy V grid, I will add 3 images. So the first one is, of course, the profile. So let's resume. And now you see the first image. So let's use resizable and scale to fill, so it has the right aspect ratio. So let's copy this and paste it 2 more times. And I will add 2 and 3. As you can see, the 3 images that we have at the moment is in a single column. And this is because the columns here is defined with a single grid item. So at the top, I will store this value inside another variable because this code over here will get pretty bulky and I want to keep the code clean. So here we're going to declare a column grid, which is an array of grid item. So here I will just do the same thing. So it's going to be a grid item, and that's it. So here we can replace this value, which is the same thing as this, by column grid. So the code is a lot cleaner. So let's resume. So here in your array, we can add a second grid item. And what it does is that it tells our grid that you want 2 columns. Just like that. So if you add a third one, now we have a 3-column layout. In SwiftUI, there's 3 different ways of displaying your grid items. The first one is inside your grid item, just do dot fixed, which means that it takes a CG float and it is a fixed width for your grid item. So here I can set the first one to 100, then set the second one to 200, and the third one to, let's say, 20. And what it does is that it is a fixed size. Then we can change the fixed by dot adaptive. And as you can see, this one takes a minimum and a maximum value for each images. But the one that we will be using the most is dot flexible. And dot flexible basically use equal parts for all your grid items. So let's change fix to flexible. And doing it this way, you will see that the 3 images have the same size. Next, we need a way to basically take our data and loop through these data to display multiple images without copy pasting our image view multiple times. In SwiftUI, it's the for each method. So here, let's delete these two images. And here at the top, use the for each parenthesis. So this method takes data as the first argument and the ID of each items as a second argument. So the first one, we're going to take images. Then we need to define the ID. The ID is required in order for SwiftUI to uniquely identify each element of the array. And you define it by doing \self. Then at the end, we need to declare for each item inside. So for each image in this loop. So here we can just cut this and paste it inside our method. And now you see that the for each is taking 8 images and it is rendering our image profile 8 times. So instead of using profile, we can use our variable image instead. So now we have everyone. So to create a proper grid, we need to render 45 items or like 100 instead of just 8. So instead of using the images as data, let's remove that. We're going to use a method in SwiftUI to render 45 different items. And by doing that, we don't have image anymore, but in the image, we're going here use our data, which is the array. And basically this whole operation is just returning an array multiple times until we have the desired number of items. And you do that by taking the first argument, percentage images dot count. And by doing that, it is basically looping our images multiple times until we have 45 items at the end, because the 0 counts. Our grid is almost done. So now let's fix the spacing. To fix the vertical spacing, just go to your lazy vgrid. Right after the columns, there's an argument for spacing. And here we can set it to 1 pixel. Just like that. And on the horizontal one, we need to go to the columns grid. So right after dot flexible, we can add a spacing of 1. Let's resume. And there you go. So now we have a problem, which is the image. You can see that all the image have the same aspect ratio, except this one. And this is the reason why we have these white borders. Same for here. So I'll show you a way how to fix a grid when not all items have the same aspect ratio. So the first one is the easiest one. Basically, you go to your image and then you add a frame. So let's remove the alignment. And for the width, it's going to be 124 pixels and the height 124 pixels. And here you can see that this image is over this one. So we can just add a clipped modifier and everything is fixed. But the problem by using a fixed size for your images is that it's not dynamic depending on which device you are. So on the iPhone 11 Pro, the full width of the container is 375 pixels. So divided by 3 and having these 1 pixel spacing, it's around 124. But here, let's change our device to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The display is a lot bigger, and because of that, you will have inconsistency in your spacing. To have it dynamic, we're going to remove the fixed sizing, and we're going to use a method to basically take the whole width of your current screen divided by 3. So here, let's use the UI screen dot main dot bounce dot width, which will take the whole width of our screen and take this number divided by 3, just like that. But if you do that, we don't have this 1 pixel spacing anymore. So let's take this whole value between parentheses and -1. And there you go. So let's use this whole value, copy it, and use it for your height as well. That way we have a perfect square. To make sure that it works on the other screens as well, let's change the iPhone 13 Pro Max back to the iPhone 11 Pro. And it works. So let's go back to your search view. We're going to remove the spacer and then add a scroll view. This time our direction will be vertical, show indicator to false, and inside we can add our grid. So let's play. And everything seems to work perfectly fine. Let's go back to our content view and let's play it one more time. This is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoy it, and I will see you on the next one.